Hello everyone. Now today we are going to discuss the pituitary gland, or we even say the pituitary gland, of our endocrine system. And this is the last gland that we are going to discuss about. In the previous class we have already discussed about the other three important glands, which were our adrenal glands, thyroid gland, pancreas. And in pancreas there was an interesting fact that it is a mixture of both the endocrine and the exocrine gland. So the topics to be covered in this class will be about the pituitary gland, why it is called the master gland. We will know that, what is the size of this gland, the weight of this gland, and we are going to discuss about the portion of this pituitary gland, because this pituitary gland is divided into two portions, that is two lobes. We have the anterior part and the posterior part of the pituitary gland, and the hormones so produced are different from anterior and from your posterior part of the pituitary gland. We will also discuss about the presence or absence of the intermediate lobe, or the concept of our intermediate lobe, what it is all about. We will discuss about that also. Apart from the hormones, what are being produced and their over secretion or under secretion, or just the function, after discussing that we will move on to the most important thing, which is very very important, that is control of hormonal secretions. Now we have already discussed the four different types of and the major endocrine glands. Now the secretions, we know whatever the secretions they are producing, whatever hormones are being released, but it has to be released in an appropriate amount, as we have already seen that if too much of this secretion, or any time it cannot be secreted, whenever there is need in the body, at that moment these hormones are produced. So once this hormones needs is over, once the need of these hormones are over, they need to stop its production, otherwise there will be stimulation or overstimulation of anything. So under secretion and hypersecretion, that is, or your hypersecretion, whatever we are discussing, that is as a result of your defect in the gland or the production of the hormone. But when we are going to talk about the hormonal control, we are going to definitely consider the normal state, the normal requirement in our body. And once that is achieved, then there has to be a thing called a signal should be sent to stop. The gland should be stimulated and said stop. Now the message will be sent, stop the secretion. Now we do not require it anymore. That means whatever secretion is being produced, that is a product of the gland. So that product will bring about the stop. That means it will go and stimulate the gland, now saying please do not produce more. This is what is required in our body. So these are the topics that will be covered today in this class. So we begin with our pituitary gland. The master gland, we say. Why we say master gland? Because it is found to control. It is found to control practically all the other endocrine glands. That means the other endocrine glands will function in coordination with this gland. That means this master gland will produce certain hormones, and those hormones will go and stimulate these glands to produce their respective hormones. That means what? The other glands are under the control of this gland. That's why it is called the master gland. Am I clear? So why it is called the master gland? The reason is given out here. It controls practically all the other endocrine glands. If we look at its location, it is a small projection. Small projection, pea size, weighs about 1.5 grams, and it hangs from the base of the midbrain, below the hypothalamus region. So just below the hypothalamus region, from the midbrain, there is a small projection which is of pea size and weighs about your 1.5 kg. So pea size and 1.5 kg, and small projection hanging from the base of the midbrain just below the hypothalamus. These 2 points you have to remember. But the reason why it is called the master gland, it's given out here. It controls practically all the other endocrine glands. Now, if we look at this gland, the diagram of this gland, we will find that there are two distinct lobes. We will see there are two distinct lobes, and we can see it here also. There's one lobe out here and the other lobe is also out here. So we have this anterior pituitary, and this is your posterior pituitary gland. So this is a pituitary gland, and we have the anterior part and we have our posterior part. The hypothalamus, just below the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is present somewhere out here. Okay, the number 4 you can see labeled out here as hypothalamus. Okay, and as a whole, if we look at number 1 out here, this particular cross section out here which is given as a whole, this entire thing is nothing but it is the pituitary gland. So how many lobes are there? There are 2 distinct lobes, the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. Am I clear? And you can see, just as we said, that it hangs like a projection from our midbrain. So midbrain region is here. From there, a small projection, it hangs like that, and it's located just below the hypothalamus. Am I clear? And this is nothing but this is our brain. So we can say that there are 2 distinct lobes. All right, we can say that there are 2 distinct lobes, the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. Now we can always say now, okay, you all have studied till now the various glands, and now you must have the idea of it, that always remember, since these are 2 distinct lobes, so obviously the hormones produced will be also different. Yes or no? So first we'll discuss the hormones produced from the anterior pituitary, and then we'll discuss about the hormones produced by the posterior pituitary. The front part of the posterior pituitary, okay, is different from the rest of the lobe and is called intermediate lobe. That means now we are discussing the concept of your intermediate lobe. So if we look at this diagram out here, we can see that this is our posterior pituitary. Look at this front part out here, okay. Now it is observed that this is slightly different compared to this other entire pituitary part, that is posterior pituitary. Compared to the entire posterior pituitary region, this front part is slightly different from them. It's a little bit different, okay, and that is termed as our intermediate lobe. All right, it is known as your intermediate lobe. Doesn't mean that is an extra lobe. There are 2 distinct lobes only, but if you look at this posterior pituitary, its front part out here is slightly little bit different, okay, compared to the entire posterior pituitary. That's why we call it as an intermediate lobe. Now this intermediate lobe is not present in everyone, okay. So we will find out that this intermediate lobe is absent in human beings. We do not have such thing, okay. That means the posterior pituitary, whenever we do not see the intermediate lobe over there in case of our human beings, but we see a larger and more functional intermediate lobe in the lower animals. That means in their posterior pituitary part, the front part of it is slightly different, and you can see a distinct structure out there, and that's why it is just termed as intermediate lobe over there. Am I clear? So intermediate lobe is absent in humans, and it is larger and more functional in the lower animals. I hope it is clear now, the concept of your intermediate lobe. Now we will begin with our anterior pituitary lobe. Alright, so the hormones which are produced by this anterior pituitary lobe out here, we will now discuss one by one. The first hormone that we will talk about is our growth hormone. Okay, as the name suggests, growth. Yes or no? This hormone is essential for our growth. Children, remember one thing. Whenever we say growth hormone, okay, the short form GH, capital G, capital H, sometimes it's given over there and you have to expand those. So you should remember that capital G and capital H means it is the growth hormone. Alright, the other name for the growth hormone is given out here, that is our somatotropin. It is somatotropin. Please do not get confused with the one in the pancreas where we studied somatostatin. Okay, but out here it is somatotropin. So this is the growth hormone. Okay, the other name for growth hormone is somatotropin. Sometimes in the question growth hormone is not given directly, somatotropin is mentioned. Okay, so it's produced from which gland, which endocrine gland? So you should know that. You will write in precise and specific manner, anterior pituitary lobe of the pituitary gland. Please remember, you are going to mention the specific, means the exact. Okay, that is your anterior pituitary lobe of the pituitary gland. Okay, now deficiency of this growth hormone. If that if in children, okay, there is deficiency, means the production is very less or not produced properly, this growth hormone is not produced properly in case of a children, then it will result in dwarfism. Okay, and you all know what is dwarfism. Okay, short-heightedness, that means the growth is restricted. Okay, and if there is excess production in the childhood, okay, so when you are children, okay, or when any person is a child, at that point, if there is over secretion of this hormone, okay, then you will remember that it results in another condition that is called your gigantism. Okay, we say gigantism, which means there are long bones, and these bones are lengthened beyond their normal bones. Normal bone size is somewhat approximate for everyone, but you know, it becomes very, very long. Okay, more long than the normal bones. So remember, whenever the growth hormone is deficient in the children, so that means when a children is there, let's say when a person is at the age of let's say 10, 15 or something like that, okay, 10, 11, 12, something like that, that means they are in childhood, yes or no? And if the hormone is not produced properly, then it will lead to dwarfism. And if there is more hormone produced, that means over secretion is there, it leads to gigantism. And when remember what is gigantism, that is there will be presence of long bones lengthened beyond the normal bones. Okay, now what will happen if this growth hormone is secreted, all right, in very much excess in the adults? So in the adults, it will lead to another condition called acromegaly. So over secretion of this growth hormone in adults will lead to a condition called acromegaly. It will lead to a condition called acromegaly. Am I clear? So extra growth of bones in the face will be there. That means your face will look disproportionate, okay? That means the growth of the bones is not in a proportionate manner. Then you have to remember there will be extra growth of bones in your hands also and in your feet also. You look totally disproportionate, okay? There is no such growth overall. And there will be a large nose and thick lips. There will be large nose and thick lips. So again, we just revise. Anterior pituitary lobe of the pituitary gland, okay, it produces the growth hormone. First hormone that we're discussing is a growth hormone. And you know, as the name suggests, growth hormone, it is essential for the growth. And the other name for this growth hormone is your somatotropin. Okay, it is somatotropin. So if there is deficiency of this growth hormone in children, if there's deficiency, it leads to dwarfism. If it is in excess, then it leads to gigantism. The same hormone, if it is over-secreted in adults, then it leads to your acromegaly. Okay, and this condition, acromegaly, what happens in this is that there's extra growth of your bones in the face. That means your face looks disproportionate, because if there is too much of bone growth in your face will look abnormal compared to your entire body. Your hands and feet will also look different, because there will be extra growth of the bones in the face, hand and feet. And there will be a large nose and thick lips. Okay, so this was the first hormone that we discussed for anterior portion of our pituitary gland, that means interior lobe. Now we will discuss about the other hormones that is released from the anterior pituitary lobe. Okay, so you have to remember the hormones so produced, other hormones so released, okay, from the anterior pituitary. The first was growth hormone, the other hormones we are discussing. First is TSH. Okay, what is the full form of TSH? Thyroid stimulating hormone. Now we have said that this pituitary gland is the master gland. That means it will produce the hormone thyroid stimulating hormone. So this hormone will go and stimulate the thyroid gland. Hey, thyroid gland, come on, produce the hormone thyroxine. So on stimulation by this TSH released from the anterior pituitary, okay, this thyroid gland produces thyroxine. Am I clear? So that's why we say master gland. Now do you understand why we are saying master gland? Because it is controlling the activities of the other endocrine glands. It is triggering the other endocrine glands to function. That means it is releasing hormones, okay, which goes and triggers the glands and stimulates them to produce their respective hormones. Similarly, we have gonad stimulating hormone, GSH. Okay, it regulates the activities of testes and ovaries. Okay, so therefore these gonads are there. Unless and until they do not get stimulated by the gonad stimulating hormone, which is released from the anterior pituitary of the pituitary gland, they will not regulate the activities of testes and ovaries. So therefore, whenever there is release of gonad stimulating hormone GSH from the anterior pituitary, then this hormone goes and it will regulate the activities of testis and ovaries. And you know that the testis and ovaries will then lead to the production of their respective hormones. Testis will produce testosterone and ovaries will produce estrogen and progesterone, which we will study in our reproductive system. Okay, moving on to the next hormone that is produced by our anterior pituitary is adrenocorticotropic hormone. So whenever we say adrenocorticotropic hormone, the full form out here is given and the short form, abbreviated form is ACTH. Okay, what does this do now? So you have to remember, we are saying out here corticotropic and cortisone's hormone. We have already discussed in adrenal cortex, not in adrenal medulla. We know that adrenal medulla produces adrenaline. So when we say adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH, so this is released from this anterior pituitary. This hormone so released will slowly go and then will stimulate this adrenal cortex to release further hormones according to the requirement in our body. So now the concept of why pituitary gland is called the master gland is known to us. We can see these are the other hormones released from the anterior pituitary apart from our growth hormone. Growth hormone, okay, if they are deficient in children, it leads to dwarfism. If it is in excess production, it leads to gigantism in the children. But if there is overproduction of this hormone, oversecretion of this hormone in the adults, then it leads to a condition called acromegaly. Okay, and the other hormones released from the anterior pituitary, you have to just remember their functions, as they are going to bring about the stimulation of the other endocrine glands for their proper functioning. So this is why our pituitary gland is known as a master gland. So I hope you all have understood till here. So we can move further, where we will discuss now the next lobe of the pituitary gland, that is hormones which are now going to be released from the posterior pituitary lobe of the pituitary gland. Okay, so this posterior pituitary, what does it do is that it produces two hormones. Okay, this posterior pituitary lobe will produce two hormones, and they're very, very important ones. Number one is our antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone. Short form is given out here, ADH. Okay, you should be able to expand these. So please learn the name by heart without any spelling errors, because if you're asked to expand and if there's spelling error, you do not score even a half a mark, even if your answer is to the, like let's say it's, even it's correct actually. Okay, but the spelling errors. So spelling errors won't be entertained because it just comes a 1 mark. So in the objectives, you either score full 1 or you score 0. Please remember this. Okay, the other name for this hormone, antidiuretic hormone, if we see, okay, the other name for this ADH is our vasopressin. What is it? Vasopressin. So we are discussing the first hormone that is being produced from the now posterior pituitary. That means posterior pituitary lobe of the posterior pituitary lobe of the pituitary gland. Okay, what does this do? What is the function of this actually hormone? So it constricts the blood vessels. So your blood vessels will get constricted. So its main function is to constrict the blood vessel so as to cause rise in blood pressure. Doesn't mean that it continuously do the same thing. Whenever it's required, it does that. So it constricts the blood vessel, causing rise in blood pressure, and it even acts on the kidney. Okay, this hormone goes and acts on the kidney, increasing the reabsorption of water from the kidney. We have already studied in our excretory system that the kidney is the filtering unit, and you have the nephrons in the kidney are the filtering units. They're going to filter, okay, the blood, purify it, collect the waste from it, the useful substance are going to be now reabsorbed. So that reabsorption, okay, of water from the kidney tubules, okay, is effectively carried out, okay, if this ADH is going to act upon it. Okay, now we have deficiency, means if this hormone ADH is not produced, okay, in proper amount, then, or it's not released, then it is going to cause a condition called diabetes insipidus. What is it going to cause? Diabetes insipidus. And in the previous class where we discussed pancreas, we studied that insulin produced by the beta cells, yes or no? The insulin that is produced by the beta cells of the pancreas, it regulates the it actually checks the rise in sugar level in the blood. Yes or no? So you have to remember which hormone causes diabetes mellitus and which hormone causes diabetes insipidus. When we say diabetes mellitus, that is something to do with the insulin. When we say diabetes insipidus, it's something to do with our next hormone, that is ADH. Am I clear? And what are the symptoms out here? Frequent urination, coitus frequent urination. You feel very thirsty, loss of water from our body. Okay. Then next hormone that we talk about is our oxytocin. Okay, now we are going to remember the two functions of this oxytocin. Stimulates vigorous contraction of the uterus in a pregnant mother, leading to the birth of a baby. So whenever a woman is pregnant, and whenever she reaches that particular stage, when parturition is there, when she has to deliver the baby, at that moment, this oxytocin is released, okay, from this pituitary part, pituitary lobe. Which lobe? Posterior pituitary lobe. And then they go and then bring about continuous contraction, okay, vigorous contraction of the uterus, which will help to push the baby out, okay. And apart from that, it also stimulates milk ejection. What does it do? It stimulates milk ejection. Now the next thing, as I told you, that we will discuss about is our control of hormonal secretions. When we say feedback inhibition, that is also known as feedback inhibition. If there is too much of that hormone being produced, we say slow down, even a normal person. Yes or no? If it is too much, we say slow down, too much, speed up. So there you have to remember this. Body mechanism needs to be maintained for a normal state. We cannot have extra production of any hormones anytime, anywhere. So there has to be a coordination of these hormones. Okay, so that's why we say whenever there is change in the state, there are messages, okay, through the body system, either to increase if there is fall in the hormonal level, or to decrease if there is rise in that particular level of the hormone. Okay, so the kind of ordering for opposite, that means, see, opposite means what? When we say that a gland is producing a hormone, that is something that is happening. Yes or no? Now we want to say that gland to stop, okay, to produce that hormone. That means opposite. Yes or no? So that is called negative feedback. Why we are doing this negative feedback? To come to a normal state. To come to a normal state. Understood? So whenever the gland is producing a hormone, okay, that means it is required in our body. Okay, now once the hormone is being produced in a proper amount, which is required in our body, in the normal range it is there. Once it starts to increase, that particular increase in that hormone will go and stimulate that particular gland, and it will say, please now stop the production. Okay, now it is done. So this is called negative feedback. That means you are telling the gland to stop to produce that hormone. Okay, that is called a feedback inhibition. And feedback inhibition is of two types. We have positive and negative. First we will discuss about our negative feedback mechanism. So when we say negative feedback mechanism, for ICSE this is very important, okay. And we always have to write with respect to this thyroid stimulating hormone. When we say TSH, okay, this thyroid stimulating hormone, actually, how is it going to be released? Let's see. Negative feedback. Now we all know that there is a region in our brain that is called hypothalamus. Okay, thyroid releasing hormone. Hypothalamus will release a hormone called thyroid releasing hormone. This TRH, so released, will go and stimulate the anterior pituitary to secrete which hormone? Thyroid stimulating hormone. This thyroid stimulating hormone will now go and stimulate the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. Okay, now if the thyroxine is produced and the amount that was needed by the body is reached, after that if there is any slight increase over there, that means this is the end product. So if there is slight increase also in the end product, this end product is going to now say the anterior pituitary to stop the production of this thyroid stimulating hormone, as a result of which this is called negative feedback. It will inhibit the release of TSH. It will inhibit the release of TSH. At the same time, the extra production will go, right, and say the hypothalamus also stop the production of TRH, that is thyroid releasing hormone, has to be stopped. So this is also called negative feedback, inhibits the release of TRH. Am I clear? So that means once there is increase in this level of thyroxine, which is not now more required, that whatever is required is produced and now extra is not required, so that little bit of also increase will go and bring about, okay, the stop We'll put a stop to this TSH production as well as the TRH production. TSH and TRH. So in order to stop that, this extra thyroxine, whichever is produced, will go and it will tell the anterior pituitary to stop the production of TSH, and again it will go and tell the hypothalamus to stop the production of TRH. As a result of which, what will happen? There will be no further stimulation and whatever was required is produced. So this stop message which is sent is called negative feedback. So once again we do that. How we are going to check or understand the negative feedback mechanism. So we have a region in our brain, we all know, that is our hypothalamus, and this hypothalamus produces a hormone called thyroid releasing hormone. Okay, whenever the body is required, the brain is the main organ, yes or no, that is going to send messages that now the body requires this and that, so it coordinates. So you know that nervous control and you have a chemical coordination. So hypothalamus will bring about the release of TRH, that is a thyroid releasing hormone. Once this TRH is released, thyroid releasing hormone, it will slowly go and then reach the anterior pituitary. We all studied anterior pituitary of the pituitary gland, that is the anterior portion, anterior lobe. So now this will stimulate the anterior pituitary to produce which hormone? Thyroid stimulating hormone. And you know that this thyroid stimulating hormone will again go and stimulate the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine. You can see step by step how it is doing. Once the thyroxine is produced, whatever is required by the body, a little bit also if increase is there in the end product, then there will be immediate message sent. So to the anterior pituitary also and to the hypothalamus also to stop the production of their respective hormones. That is this anterior pituitary to stop TSH and that one to stop, TRH. Am I clear? This is negative feedback mechanism. It's very, very important. You should know this schematic representation. If you do it in this way, you get full score. You score full marks. Now the positive feedback mechanism. When we say positive feedback means the production of that end product, okay, whatever is produced, it will say that to produce more and more, okay, to bring about a particular function. So this happens only in few cases. For example, uterine contractions during the childbirth. Okay, normal state, in the normal state the uterus does not contract, it is uncontracted when pregnant women, okay, and once contraction, once this hormone, okay, once there is a childbirth about to be, like there is a signal that now the baby is about to be born, so at that time, okay, this one contraction will command to bring about more and more contraction, okay, till the delivery is completed. So what are we demanding? That means we are demanding for more and more production after the normal production of this hormone, okay, that is oxytocin is produced, yes or no? So once the oxytocin is produced, okay, and the contraction has begun, so this contraction as it begins, it will bring about the stimulation, okay, of the release of more oxytocin, more and more oxytocin to bring about vigorous contraction till the childbirth is complete. So what is happening? There's a command for more and more production out. So it's called positive feedback. Negative feedback means once the amount is reached, we say stop. Am I clear? So this is all about today's class where we talked about a positive feedback mechanism and a negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism was taught with respect to our thyroid stimulating hormone, and out here positive feedback was due to your oxytocin. You all know that oxytocin hormone is responsible for bringing about the uterine contraction. Okay, with this we keep it till here, and I hope you have understood whatever I taught you for today's class. Please revise and please make sure that you jot it down in your notes copy and you practice the diagram of the pituitary gland, learn the location and the functions of the hormones, their oversecretion and undersecretion leads to what conditions, and which gland produces which hormone, and there are two portions in our pituitary gland, the interlobe concept, whether it's present in humans or not. You have to know that. Why we are saying intermediate? Is it an extra lobe that is present? No, it's not an extra lobe, just the posterior pituitary in the front portion. They're slightly different from the entire region, so that's, for that we're just giving it a name called your intermediate lobe, but it's not an extra lobe. Just remember that. So there are only two lobes. Alright, so with this we put an end to this class and we will meet you soon. Thank you so much.